All right, everybody. Dan Mum from Las Vegas, Mastermind with Neil Schwartz. Very exciting time right now. Dan, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, good job. So we're going to have some fun here today. I know we are. Dan, let's do a little intro on yourself. I tried to market you as the biggest, baddest Mr. Wonderful guy that we've got. So tell me where I went off track.
Yeah, very far off track. I don't know about any of that, but I live in Las Vegas. This is my 10th year in the business. I've been in Mike Ferry coaching basically since day one. The first year, basically, when I got my license, I started pretty shortly after that. I've grown consecutively year over year, every year since I've been in business, which is great, especially because Vegas, we saw a big downturn, the number of transactions. I'm sure you guys did too, Neil. In 2022, when the rates went up, we went down like 55% in the number of deals happening here. So I guess that's what I'm most proud of is the recent growth, despite the market challenges.
So Dan, what year did you come in the market?
2016.
And you came from where? What business?
Dietary supplements. I worked in customer service and sales for dietary supplements.
Drugs, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good. So, but it was direct sales.
No, not direct sales. But it was where it did help me was I was on the phone for 8 hours a day. You were on the phone for 8 hours a day. You had a script to follow and you had certain questions you had to ask. And you just became accustomed to kind of having a structured conversation. And I think that's a really valuable skill, whether it's sales or not. Definitely helped.
So were you calling retail or were you calling stores?
We were doing outbound calls to customers, direct to consumers.
So it was direct selling.
To some degree, yeah, but it was mostly follow-ups and things like that, not complete cold prospecting, but yeah, to some degree it was sales. And then we also had some inbound calls come too.
Where did the leads come from?
Marketing channels they did, direct mail, online, things like that.
Okay, so you were kind of fielding the calls, so to speak?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so it'd be like a sign call.
Yeah, pretty similar, yeah.
Okay, all right, good, excellent. You did that for how long?
Too long. I'd probably be a lot further now if I had started what I'm doing now sooner. I think 4 years from the time I graduated college until I got into real estate, basically. And at the peak of it, I've told Mike I was making $55,000 a year, which I thought was great at the time. I was very proud of that.
And working how many hours a week?
Good question. Like probably 50 hours a week or so.
Yeah. Okay. And you got a paycheck every week, whether you needed it or not, right?
Yeah, I needed it most days. Too much month at the end of the money, so they speak.
Yeah, I got it.
But then at the end of that, basically I was working harder than everyone else. I had a lot of ambition and I wanted to keep growing, but I couldn't. You know, there's only so much opportunity in that environment. So I asked the owner of the company for an ownership stake and he laughed at me and said no, which I expected. And I said, okay, so I'm going to leave. And then I just stumbled into real estate because it was a sales business and I knew someone who did it. And I was really just looking for any sales job. Looking back on it, that was the luckiest stroke of luck that I've had in my life is the fact that I chose real estate because there would have been a lot of other sales businesses that wouldn't have worked out the same way.
Yeah, we really don't have a cap on us, do we?
True.
Almost every other sales business, pharmaceuticals, it's, the only other thing that you could do is maybe sell jet airplanes or something.
Yeah. And a fast ramp up too, right? You can go to making 500 grand a year from zero pretty quickly in today's market, especially in your market. I was just talking to a client of mine. He's the CEO of a medical device sales company. The guy's got so much responsibility. Great guy, amazing leader. You would think this guy's earning millions of dollars a year. He's making, I think, $450,000 a year, which is a lot of money, but compared to what we can do, it's crazy.
So your first year in business, how much money did you make? That was 10 years ago. So 2016, right?
Yeah. Going on 10 years. Yeah. I made 75,000, somewhere around there.
First year in real estate. Mm-hmm. So in the first year of real estate, you had already surpassed how much you were making at the top end in your sales job at the pharmaceutical company, or it's not pharmaceutical, it was vitamins, right?
Yeah. After tax, it was probably a wash, but I could tell that the the trajectory was increasing pretty quickly. Our price point was pretty low at that time. I mean, in Vegas 2016, the prices were pretty low. And also I was working with a lot of investors at lower commission deals, which was a mistake. But it increased pretty quickly after that.
Got it. Fantastic. So how did you connect up with Mike?
I met a lender randomly who believed in prospecting, which is rare. And so he invited me to come to his office to prospect. His deal was, I'll teach you to prospect if you send me your leads, basically.
Sure.
And so I did. And then I met someone else there who was a Mike Ferry agent who just stumbled across him. He heard me making calls and kind of tutored me and mentored me. And then that got me into the ecosystem, and the rest was history.
So did you start with the broker you're with now?
No.
Okay. Who'd you start with?
Berkshire Hathaway was the first company.
Okay. Well, a lot of those guys and gals follow Mike or have followed Mike.
Yeah.
So it'd be normal for that to happen.
Yeah.
But you've really ramped up very fast. So what makes you so driven? Where does that come from?
Well, I was an athlete, so probably a lot of that comes from that background, I would imagine.
Okay.
Maybe not as much driven, but consistent and disciplined, I would say, are probably the main attributes that might contribute to any unusual success that I've had.
But guys like me who never were athletes, that was a joke. How do I do what you do? I mean, do I have to be an athlete?
No, not at all. There's a lot of great agents that have no background in that. But yeah, I think you do need to take on that mindset, take on the mindset of a champion and an athlete for sure. It's just part of never being satisfied. I think that's what separates athletes from non-athletes a lot of time in business. From what I see is that athletes just always want to be better. And you could take on that mindset for sure. There's always someone better than you. There's always someone faster than you. There's always someone who's done it better, faster, got it nailed down. So it's just very humbling, I think, coming up in that environment, and that helps for sure.
So, Dan, books that you read that helped open this up, maybe things that your parents had said, I'm always interested in where that comes from so we can emulate it. Any ideas, any thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I think to some degree, it's just part of who you are in your DNA. It's hard to really train it. I mean, good example is my parents, bless their heart, amazing people, great marriage, but they're middle-class family from New Jersey, didn't grow up with any particular ambitious strain in me from them for sure. So anything that I had came from within me, I guess, to some degree. The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy changed my life. I'd really recommend that if anyone here hasn't read that. That kind of lays out the basics and kind of drove me to want to be world-class at the fundamentals. And that's what Mike teaches too, is just doing the basics at a world-class level, you'll earn an unlimited amount of money. And in our business, it's just everyone wants to get away from the fundamentals because no one wants to hear that. It's not sexy, it's not fun, but that's really what it comes down to. And that also resonates with being an athlete too. I mean, Mike always talks about it. Professional basketball players practice every day. They practice foul shots every day. I played hockey. Hockey players practice. They do morning skates before every game. Same drills over and over and over again. They shoot hundreds of pucks a day. So, yeah, it's just a matter of doing the fundamentals.
So they shoot pucks at Goldberg, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Remember that movie?
Yeah.
I that's such a great movie. If you guys haven't seen, forgot the name, Duck. I guess the Mighty Ducks.
Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, Mighty Ducks, where they were trying to teach Goldberg how to be a goalie, and Goldberg didn't want anything to do with it, so they tied him in the goal and shot hundreds, maybe thousands of pucks at him until he didn't care anymore. Go ahead, shoot pucks at me. That is the best metaphor for taking rejection I have ever seen. Great stuff. So you played hockey.
Yeah, I played in college. Yeah.
Did you play goalie?
No, I'm not that crazy.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so first year, $75,000. How did you start ramping it up?
Slow increases. I mean, 10 years is a long time, relatively short time, I guess, compared to some of the agents that you've worked with. But If you grow 30% a year over year, it doesn't take very long to get. I mean, last year I was my best year. I earned 1.6. And so it's just a slow linear growth up. I think one thing that I might have done differently early than most people is that I understood the value of my time and leveraging and hiring. So I did that very, very early. I hired my first assistant basically immediately. And then I hired my second assistant when I was around like 40 deals a year. And so that really helped me stay focused on the income generating stuff. To me, that was always the most, I guess I'm a math guy, I'm a nerd, but it just made sense to me that I can earn $1,000 an hour calling. Why the heck would I do anything else other than that? It just blows me away when my buyer's agent still likes driving to put lock boxes on our listings. And I think it's crazy. We have a runner on our team that costs $30. You could pay this guy $30. He'll go put a lockbox on a property. You earn $1,000 an hour and you're going to go drive and do that. It makes no sense. Just that for me, that I guess was an asset that I had pretty early.
Derek, you listening? Good job. It's exactly what I had a conversation with Derek about this morning. They're struggling with that. Good stuff. I think that agents just, Dan, don't get it. So 1.6 million is how many transactions?
105 personal close transactions. I'm not counting my buyer agent and that stuff.
So 105, and all of those are listings sold?
Correct. Some of them are double-ended though. So yeah.
Got it. Okay, 105. So your average sales price is pretty high.
Compared to the market here, yeah. Well, I charge more. It's not really the price, it's the commission, because I charge 4.5% for lower price point stuff and 3.5% in the higher price point. So that helps. People don't realize how much your average fee makes a difference. Sorry, go ahead.
Right, to your side.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, not total. No, not total. Just
right,
my
I
side.
understand. Okay, so your side is that. So I want you to think about that. I want you to walk us through how you present that value as we move along here. But right now, I need a couple more answers. Your buyer's agent does how many deals?
About 35.
Okay. And is that somebody been with you for a while?
2.5 years.
Okay.
Which I think is a long time for buyer's agents in today's market.
But 35 deals. How much prospecting do they have to do?
Basically none. Her only job is to service my stuff because I want to be 100% focused on listings taken. And this is just my business, not to say other people should do this, but for me, if I just don't have to worry about buyers, that's a win all on its own. If I don't have to do any managing or overseeing or leadership, I'm not good at that stuff. So I like to just stay out of it. So for her, she's just solving the problem of having somewhere to send my buyers to so I can focus on what I'm world class at. That's why I don't really have a lot of standards for her prospecting or generating on her own. But I understand for different people that might not work.
Right. Well, I do want to talk about your singleness of mind and how you work on that mindset. Because most of us feel like we have to be all things to all people. Right. And you've chosen the exact opposite, where you're only one thing to a few people, but that few makes you $1.6 million a year. You probably have, oh, you're not married. You're Victoria. Are you guys still together?
Right. Yes, we are.
I got to call her today.
Yeah. She's high on the list. I know.
I know. Okay, good. So where did that come from? Because it's very common for an agent want to get every call, return every phone call, not lose any deals. I suspect that a number of deals walk by you in any given day, right?
Yeah, most. I turn down more than I take on. I think you have to kind of constrain to grow is kind of the saying. So if you want to grow your business and your income, you have to narrow your focus onto a smaller and smaller target. I think that the first place to start with that is with listings. If you haven't already done that, I think a lot of people should consider, I need to really focus on just generating listings and not trying to do this and being a buyer's agent. To me, it's like foot surgery and brain surgery. They're two different types of sales, two different types of personalities, two different skill sets, two different schedules. It just doesn't make sense. I think they should be separate licenses. I know Mike said that before. I completely agree with that. So in that regard, it makes sense. Listings taken is a way better business. I mean, we can handle 30 listings at a time with me and 1 or 2 staff. You can't do more than 3 buyers at a time who are active, right? You'd go crazy. So it doesn't scale. It's just kind of common sense, I think.
Got it. But you have to, it's also different scripts, different dialogues, different focus, right?
Yeah.
So tell me how you ramped up to that. Where did that come from? Because Mike says listings only, listings only, listings only, but there's very few people in the country that actually do that.
Yeah, I think what you said earlier is spot on, that you have to be willing to lose temporarily to gain long term. So if you look at it as like a graph, if you do both, you'll kind of start higher because buyers are a good opportunity. You'll make some money, but your ramp up is going to be slower. If you commit to being a listing agent, you're going to start slower because you're going to lose in the immediate, but then you're going to get that big elbow curve up basically, right? So that's where it just comes down to if you're willing to sacrifice and bet on yourself. That's really what you're doing by being a listing agent, is you're betting on yourself. You're saying, I'm going to commit this time to being world class, learning the scripts, being willing to deal with some rejection, because I know that in the future, that time invested is going to yield massive returns. And a lot of people just aren't willing to bet on themselves. So they take the quick, easy paycheck to take a buyer out. But really, that's kind of like a shortcut, right? And that could be okay if you're okay with making a certain amount of money. Then it's fine. But if you want to keep growing your income, then eventually that's going to have to change, I think.
You know, a few years ago, I was at an event, Mike Ferry event, and everybody in the front row, like yourself, I noticed had smaller markets. In your case, you don't have a small market, but you have a very focused amount of business and where it's going to come from. So I coined this phrase: to get bigger, you have to get smaller.
Yeah.
And that's really what you've done, is to get bigger. You keep getting smaller. Ed Kaminsky did this by raising his price point every time. And so, you know, he got to the point where he was dealing with only $20 million properties that are on the ocean, as opposed to, you know, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Torrance.
Yeah. Can I add on to that? One other thought?
Please.
I think one other way that everyone can get smaller, even if you're not ready to commit to just listings only, a great way to get smaller, to get bigger, is to narrow on the motivation scale of clients that you work with too. So I made a decision in the last year, I was only going to work with 9s and 10s on a scale of 1 to 10, meaning absolutely have to. No guessing, no maybes. I know sometimes those can work and you could figure it out, but I just made the decision I'd rather just not. And that resulted in a massive amount of growth, to the point where now I'm overwhelmed with 9s and 10s, like too many 9s and 10s that we can handle. So it's just proof that if you narrow the focus, you start building goodwill with the clients. It helps you service them better. They see more value in your service because you're not spreading yourself too thin, which just causes the entire thing to grow and works out better that way, I think.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. What a great thought. Excellent. Good job. So how do I do that? I have a family to feed. I'm talking about the average agent. I have a family to feed. I want to focus in on this. I hear this all the time. I follow Mike Ferry, yada, yada, yada. But what helps you make that decision, and more importantly, stay with that decision? Because I'm sure there's days where you don't have any buyers or sellers at any price points.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tempting to take on the 7s or 8s.
And the assistant says, "Hey, I got somebody that wants to that might want to buy something now or in the near future," and you got nothing else to do. Let me go help them.
Yeah, great question. That's really the test, the scenario you just described. And I think it comes down to what's your mindset about abundance, because in our market, on an average week, there's 800 listings. There's no shortage of
new listings coming up.
Yeah, 800 new listings that come on the market every week. And I think that's true in most markets, unless you're in a really small area. There's no shortage of sellers who are 9s and 10s, right? So there's just absolutely no shortage of it. It just depends on your commitment to find them, is really what it boils down to. And it's just a trap. The scenario you just described, Neil, is a trap where you say, well, I'm slow, so I can do it, or I don't have anything else going on, so I'm going to take on this person. All that does is it sets you back further and it digs your hole deeper, because now you're going to get frustrated working with that person. They may or may not even transact. If they do, the fee's going to be less. They're going to be harder to work with. They're going to see less value in your expertise. All of those problems come up. And it just takes away time that you could be investing in finding the 9s and 10s to begin with. So yeah, it takes practice, and it's hard to make that decision. But the more you do it, just like any habit, the more you build it, you start to realize it's going to work out better.
The interesting that what you're talking about, the interesting thing is, Mike wasn't even sure he could pull off finding anybody that would spend $50,000 for 6 months with him. And he's found a number of people. So you're saying, you just keep going higher and higher and higher and higher, and you just stay focused with those people. And, you talk to them every day. It's more fun to talk to you every day than it is, somebody I got to keep convincing to preview property and learn the scripts and dialogues. We don't have to convince you very hard to learn the scripts and dialogues and role play, right?
Exactly. It's the exact same thing for your clients. Also with the service too, we could deliver the exact same service, and I've done this, for a seller who's a 10 on a motivation scale and a seller who's a 5. The service is the same. I'm the same. My staff is the same. What we're doing is the same. The 10 is going to think we're the best agent ever since sliced bread. They're going to think we're miracle workers. And the 5 is going to think we're absolute trash and garbage and that we didn't do our jobs properly. Even though the service is the same, it's how much pain and motivation there is changes how they perceive the value and who they're working with. And that 5, when they are upset with you, just creates so much more anxiety and stress, and your team's discouraged and your staff doesn't want to deal with those people. So yeah, even if you don't change anything, just changing who you're working with is going to make everything more enjoyable in your business, I think.
So Dan, I hear it. Clearly we see it. But how do we get the people to buy into it? Is there like, do this, this, and this, and then that will happen? I mean, how does this happen for you?
I think you need to shorten your definition of a lead. That's one area. Have higher standards on how long you're going to keep calling someone. Get better pre-qualifying. Ask harder, more direct questions faster. Sort faster. I guess that's the overall mindset, Neil, that I have, is that I'm not convincing people. I'm just sorting. I got really good at sorting. So instead of chasing people down and convincing them and twisting their arms, I think that's bad business to do that. Just how you just described. We're way better off just being good sorters. Just no, 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 yes, no, 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 yes, no, no, no. And that's it. That's all we're doing.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is that you're disqualifying more than you're qualifying.
Yeah, generally, I try and not have a bias or perception. I think you're better off just asking the questions and listening to what they tell you, right?
Okay.
If it's a yes, it's a yes. But if someone is not motivated, our job is to not make them motivated. You can't do that. It doesn't. I think a lot of agents try to, but it just doesn't. It's not the way the world works.
But Dan, I've got a house payment.
Okay, so you should spend your time finding motivated sellers. even more of a reason for you to find someone who needs to sell today rather than 3 months from now.
Okay, how do you get past, go back years, 5 years, how do you get past, I need to make money to pay my bills, so I'm going to lean toward doing that deal? How do we get past that? How do you get past it? Or let's say you're the coach. Coach me through that, coach.
Well, I would ask you to think about the times you've done that in the past and if it's worked for you or not. I think everyone knows intuitively because they've made that mistake. I made that mistake hundreds of times. You feel like I would have learned the lesson by now, but inevitably, when you do it, it takes way longer than you expect. The client turns out to be a pain. You make way less money than you thought. You're discounting your fees. It's overpriced. Everyone in those situations, they regret it and they wish they would have undone that deal. It just really comes down to, Neil, how much you believe you could find a deal today. If you don't have that belief, then you're right. You are going to take them on. Well, if you really believe that, I could call for sale by owners today. If my schedule permitted it and I had like 3 hours, I could take a listing today calling for sale by owners. And if you really believe that, then there's no reason for you to take on those deals. So it really just comes down to your ability to prospect. And you have to build that belief through your habits and your routines over a long period of time. It doesn't come overnight. But when you do it repeatedly over a long period of time, you start to believe it.
So, okay. So I hear you that the scripts and dialogues are going to help me overcome um, or determine whether or not a seller is really going to sell. But how long does it take to learn the scripts and dialogues? Because I gotta sell some houses.
Yeah. So you better get started. It doesn't take long. If you're doing it, it's crazy to think about. If you do something 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, how long do you think it takes for you to get good at it?
Get
Probably,
very, I don't know, Dan, let's ask you. How many in the beginning, toward the beginning, you knew a little bit of the scripts and dialogues, et cetera, but you wanted to get Dan good, not damn good, Dan good.
yeah.
Okay. And I mean, and we're talking about able to handle expireds and for sale by owners at a really, really high level. How long is that going to take you to practice that to get that great? And let me stop you for a second. I'm hammering you on this because I'm really hammering everybody else here because for the most part, they don't do even the minimum that needs to get done, let alone the time, effort, and energy that you've put in.
Yeah. The minimum is not much. I would say 2 weeks. If you do it 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you prospect consistently, in 2 weeks, you're going to know the scripts. If you don't, you might take a little bit longer, but not much. To get world class, yeah, it's going to be hard. It takes a lot of repetition. For example, the January I took 17 listings. This month I've taken 11 so far. So I've had a pretty strong start to the year. And even then, I was just thinking yesterday, my pre-qualifying now is just at the point where I feel like I'm starting to really nail it down. And that's 26 sellers that I've pre-qualified hard in the last month and a half. So yeah, there's no end. If you want to become world class, you always have to get better. And things change. Market conditions change. Our pre-qualifying changes. I never had to ask a seller before, what if they have an assumable loan and what their problem, if they had solar panels on their house, which now is an issue. So all these skills evolve and change. But yeah, just to get the base level, it doesn't take long at all, I don't think.
Okay, all right. And then how long to get world class? And before I say that, what activities do I need to go through to be world class?
Yeah, you need to do the activity every day. So the actual thing you're trying to get better at, you need to do that. That's what I was referencing earlier, prospecting. You need to practice it separate from prospecting because it's kind of like playing golf, right? If you just want to get better at golf and you play, but you don't practice or have a coach, you're just going to keep repeating the bad habits. Your swing's going to suck no matter what. So you need both the playing and the practice together. That's really what creates the improvement. And then I think the third ingredient is the feedback. In the golf situation, that's your coach. You need someone who can tell you what's off and what sounds right. And for me, I think that's where recording comes into play. If you record yourself, you're going to learn very quickly what you're doing well and what you're not doing well.
Got it. Okay.
And I still record every listing presentation I go on my phone. I record still.
Okay.
So I listen to them
Are you
afterwards.
telling the clients you're doing that, or you're just doing it?
Yeah, I usually do sometimes if my phone's visible, but if not, I'm not giving the recording to anyone. So I don't think it's really that significant. I'm not videoing it, just the audio is what I listen to.
Sure. Okay. And what do you tend to find when you're listening to it? What are the things that, okay, you're great at what you do, but you want to get world class. So what are you listening for to help you get world class? Am I driving anybody else nuts besides me?
Sorry if I'm dancing around it.
No,
More energy.
you're not dancing around it. It's just, it's deep. Look, if they're disciplined and they want to do it and they will do it, it'll get done. And there's nothing you and I are going to say to change that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
They will or they won't. I'm just trying to help the person that's on the ledge jump off the ledge. So go ahead, please.
When I listen, I know in the first 10 to 15 seconds if I'm going to get the listing or not based on how I sound. The energy and enthusiasm in the first 10 to 15 seconds of a listing presentation, I think determines like 90% of your result. So honestly, that's usually what I key in the most on is how I can hear how big the smile is on my face. If I can hear if I'm monotone, if I'm flat, if I'm speaking too fast and it sounds nervous. So that's really the most important thing. And then just how much you stick to the script and how much you take control. All of those things I think are important.
How many times you walk out on a listing appointment and say, this isn't going to be?
I did yesterday or 2 days ago. So 1 out of 10, I would say.
Okay. All right. And that's just you pre-qualified wrong, or you missed a cue, or you didn't hear something?
Good example yesterday was one of the decision makers was she had a stroke and she wasn't able to make decisions. And I didn't realize she was also part of this trust. So we weren't going to be able to sell it until that gets resolved. So things like that are basically a pre-qualifying miss, I would say, is most of the time. And then other times would be, I had another one recently where the seller just kept getting off track, wanting to go into stories. He wanted to do a bunch of improvements to the house before we listed it, which I told him he didn't need to. And then I just, as he was talking, I started to get up and I pushed the chair in. And he said, "What's wrong? Where are you going?" I said, I think we're probably not ready yet, which is totally fine. Why don't you give me a call when you're ready and we can take it from there. And then I just left, which probably saved me about an hour.
Do you get a call back ever?
Yeah, I find that when you end it, they have more respect for you. You're more likely to get a call back than if you sit around for an hour and a half and listen to stories.
Got it. Interesting. You think you're a driver, analytical?
I'm an analytical, but yeah, you have to take on some driver tendencies for sure, I think, to be good.
Okay, before we go any further, so this is great stuff. Questions for Dan before we move on. Questions for Dan on what we've been talking about, or anything else that you want to hear?
Yeah, I have a question for Dan.
Go ahead,
Are
please.
you role playing today at all? Like, are you still role playing at this point?
Yeah, every day.
Okay, great. Thanks.
How do you get your leads?
Sorry.
Sorry, say it again.
How do you get your listing leads?
Yeah, I have a lot of sources. I think that's a big part of success too, is not being constrained to like 2 or 3 sources. I know a lot of agents that they kind of get frustrated with that. So naming a few of mine: Expired, for sale by owner, obviously great. My database is a big source of business, but that's past clients, centers of influence, people in my neighborhood that I've met through hosting events. Online reviews are big. Google, Yelp started to be pretty good for us. Some internet leads like HomeLight, places like that send out listing leads. We get business that way. Attorneys, family law attorneys, probate attorneys. Trying to think if there's anything else, but yeah, those. And then door knocking around listings. I started to develop that habit recently where we take a listing, I knock on all the doors around it. Took one of those recently. So it's a combination of all of that.
So if you work,
Thank you.
thank you. If you work 5 or 6, 10 different sources and you get one from each source every month, you've had a pretty good month.
Yeah, I mean, a certain source can only yield so much. There's only so many for sale by owners, right? You could become world class at them, especially in your market. I mean, you could get a good amount of listings from it, but you probably can't take 20 listings a month from for sale by owners. It's just the math isn't there.
Hey, Dan, how much of Las Vegas do you cover?
Pretty much all of it.
Okay. So
Yeah, it's a very constrained market.
yeah, I mean, it's all in that one valley, right?
Yeah.
So to get from one end to the other takes about how long?
45 minutes.
Okay, so it's not the end of the world. In 45 minutes, you could go 3 miles here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Question.
You think
I have a
I'm
question,
kidding.
Neil.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, thank you, Dan, for being here. I want to cover on how do you overcome the commission as far as being able to, in other words, if I was the seller, why will I pay you a 4.5% or a 5% on the listing end?
Great
Do you think that's
question, Tess.
Yeah. Do you think that's an objection the clients have, or do you think that's an objection that you have in your own head?
Well, no, not necessarily. I just want to make sure. I want to be like you. I'm just kidding. So, yeah, because right now, the way I do it, I take more on the commission on the listing, but I just want to hear how you handle that as far
Yeah,
as
I mean,
commission.
the reason I asked you is not to poke at you. It's a legitimate question because
Sure.
what the point I'm making is my sellers don't really ask me that. And it's because of how I'm presenting in most cases. If you do the other steps properly, you deliver pre-listing package, you're professional, you ask the questions in advance, you sound sharp. if you deliver value in advance, it's going to minimize that. And they don't always know that people charge less. I mean, if they're not interviewing other agents, they're not going to say, why would I pay you this much if so-and-so is charged? I think a lot of times agents have that. So they're afraid, they have that fear in their head, and that comes out when they're communicating with the prospect. All of that being said, yes, of course, time to time, still get it. There's a lot of things we do. I charge more, but I offer free staging for clients in certain situations. I offer free deep cleaning.
Oh, okay.
I have a lot of additions to my
Right.
service that I think make it worth it for my clients. I offer them an easy exit clause from the contract so they could terminate it for any reason at any time with no penalty.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, because I wrote that in the promo piece. I think there's 3 or 4 things that you do to make it real easy to do business with you. So let's talk about that a little bit, okay?
Sure.
What are you doing there?
Yeah, really giving away my some of my secrets here. But yeah, the easy exit clause is a good thing to do, and that helps me charge more because not every agent's willing to do that. Some agent wants to lock them into a 6-month contract where there's no out. I tell them, hey, if you're not happy with me, you could fire me anytime. But that's the reason I charge what I charge, because I can guarantee that you're going to be happy when you work with me. Of course, when you do that, you have to deliver a great quality service so that you can, and keep them engaged as a client. You have to bet on yourself there. But all those things help. We offer cash advances. So I'll pay someone if they need help with, fixing up the house or doing renovations or repairs in advance. That helps me charge a lot more because other agents in a lot of cases aren't willing to do that.
Got it. Okay, awesome.
No question.
Go ahead, Robert.
Number
First
3.
of all, Mr. Mum, it's always a pleasure to see you, whether it's in person or in a little square box. And a little bit of a plug just for everyone that doesn't know Dan. He has been for years my go-to referral source for any deals in Las Vegas, and just has done an absolutely amazing job. So if you ever do refer clients to him, just know that they will be well taken care of. Actually, probably as a company, probably gotten the most referral leads for our Vegas agents. So good guy.
Thank
My
you.
question for you is, you mentioned that your price point is higher than most others in the area. What did you do to increase your price point? Or is it just simply as you just started prospecting higher areas?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not that much higher than the median, but it is slightly. And I think the one thing that's driving that the most is, well, 2 things. One, my prospecting efforts. So when I call expireds now, I only call above a certain price. Same with for sale by owners. So I just filtered out the bottom because we have enough that I could just be more picky, I guess. And then 2, the main thing that's driving it is the database growth. And I think that's true for most agents' businesses, that your database kind of raises your price point, because as you grow as a business person, typically the people around you grow, and the people who you're surrounding yourself with are doing bigger and bigger things. So good example is my neighborhood. I know I've talked to you about that. I moved into a new neighborhood for the sole purpose of really growing my database, which has produced really, really good results for me. Have a good listing now and there that I got as a result of moving into the neighborhood. There's a second house I've sold in there, so that definitely helps.
So then the follow-up question to that is, you moved into the neighborhood, and it's a beautiful neighborhood, beautiful house. So how did you then establish yourself as the agent in that neighborhood to where you're getting listings in that neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a good question. It took a while. It's still work in progress. I mean, I've been in there for 2 years, and I'm just really starting to see results consistently. I called the whole neighborhood when I first moved in. I've called the whole neighborhood more than once just to introduce myself. Door knocked all the houses on my street and had a housewarming party just to introduce myself. I've hosted events for the whole neighborhood. I had that In-N-Out truck where I had In-N-Out come and do a thing for the whole neighborhood. That was the best event that I did. I think we had over 100 people there. The listing that I have now in there for $3 million came directly from that. Things like that. Yeah, I've mailed the neighborhood. The mailers didn't really work very well. They get so much. It's a luxury neighborhood. It's hard to stand out there. Just a personal connection, I think, really goes the furthest.
Great. That's
I got a question.
Great question, Robert. Thank you.
I've got a quick question.
Please.
You said you called all the folks in your neighborhood. Like, how did you get all those phone numbers, or where did you get those phone numbers?
Just with Arch, same service that I use for just listed calls. And it's easy because, I mean, it's a big enough neighborhood that reference a listing. Like my company, for example, has had listings and sales in there even before they were mine. So I was able to just call around that. Then you can also mention, yeah, I'm also a neighbor. I live in the neighborhood. You know what issues are going on. Another thing I did recently, I just thought of this. Victoria also did this, my girlfriend, and it worked really well. I sent out a letter to the whole neighborhood called the State of Mesa Ridge address, basically like the state of the community and what things are going well as far as maintaining property values and what things aren't going well and how we might be able to keep the property values higher. So it's just like a little white paper from a real estate perspective that I mailed out to the whole neighborhood. And that got really good results.
That's great. Fantastic. Josie.
So you charge 4.5% for listing. What do you offer to the buyer's agent? Or what do you get the seller to pay?
Yeah, it's not up to me anymore. In the past, I was getting we were offering 2.5. So most of my sellers were paying a total of 7. Now it's whatever it's very deal by deal. We have some pay 0, some pay 3. I'd say the average is probably still between 2 and 2.5.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, that letter that you sent out, was that a handwritten letter?
No, I typed it up. We have like 400 homes in the neighborhood. So I typed it up. It is specific to the neighborhood. It addressed all the issues that are going on with HOA and how we can resolve them and things like that.
Job. Other question, Dan, while we're doing this, would you put in the chat box your phone number, contact information? I just don't want to forget that.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. And other questions for Dan?
I have one, Neil.
Sure, go ahead, Marco.
So Dan, can you share with us what your day looks like from beginning to end?
Of course, yeah. The simple answer is before 12 is prospecting, after 12 is appointments. I try and go on appointments every day. That's been a habit of mine for a while. Even if I don't have an actual listing appointment, I normally do. But if I don't, I'm going to be previewing a for sale by owner or doing something to get out. I don't like staying in the office in the afternoon. I think it's a bad habit because you get less productive. Your attention starts to fade a little bit. So before 12 is all prospecting, after 12 is appointments. The prospecting routine is I do my cold calls first. So that's expired, for sale by owner, all of the colder lead sources. I do that for my first 90 minutes. I take a 10 or 15 minute break, and then I do my warm session, which is all database. I like doing database in the morning because what I found is that it's hard to get a hold of people in the morning from cold prospecting perspective because everyone's at work. So I also do a cold session in the afternoon because I get a much better contact rate then. I do that around 4 when I get home. I get 5 times as many contacts in the afternoon as I do calling cold sources in the morning. So that's why I like doing my database stuff mostly in the morning because those people answer the phone no matter what.
Thank you.
No problem.
Good stuff. Great question, Marco. Thank you. Good things. All right. Dan, we're almost into the end of the second quarter. You've taken how many listings in the first?
26 year to date.
26. Okay. I've got a number of agents here that would like to take 26 for the year and be thrilled with 18. So they can't see it. So tell me what I have to do, what they have to do to get that done in the next 2 months. What could I get? If Dan was starting today in Los Angeles, which by the way, I'd like to invite you to do.
Yeah. My income would double overnight. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Okay. So when do you plan on moving?
Good question.
Yeah.
So what would I do if I were to?
Why do you stay in the desert? It's very dry there.
I know. That's a good point. Victoria asks me that every day.
Well, I like that. I like her more all of a sudden too. Great. All right. Sorry. Go ahead. Teach.
Yeah. Well, I think seeing it is the first step. I can do this because I know there's people doing way more than what I'm doing. Josh Barker is a good example. It's kind of like the 4-minute mile thing. Before someone does it, it's kind of hard to see yourself able to do it. So here I am, and I'm sure there's agents in California who are doing that amount. I think a big ingredient of it is, one, limiting yourself to listings taken. working buyers is just going to limit how much you can produce. And that's just really a reality of it. And two is reducing your definition of a lead. I think that immediately increases how much you can do. And that takes some courage. And so not everyone's willing to do it. But if you commit to it, you're going to notice your production increase immediately.
Got it. However, you have to be doing a couple of things along the way. You have to be learning what to say and how to say it. Agreed?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
At whatever level you're at, you have to get another level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, is previewing property or knowing inventory important?
Yeah, it's exactly what I'd be doing if I was new, starting from scratch. That's a mistake that I made, was doing the buyer stuff myself. I would instead spend that time previewing and understanding property a little bit better in the afternoons when you don't have appointments. That's the perfect thing to plug into that afternoon time. So if you're new, I'd be spending the morning prospecting, generating. I would get out of the office at the same time every day, no matter what, whether you have an appointment or not. If you do, great, go on that. If not, I would get out and preview. It just, you can't hit a ball if you're not swinging the bat. If you're not out there belly to belly with sellers, you just can't sell. It's just kind of like a fundamental.
Got it. Okay. And then, so we're previewing, we're practicing. We have to be prospecting all morning,
Mm-hmm.
looking for the business. How did you get better at determining motivation of the client? Because that seems to be an issue among a lot of the average agents, that they either don't ask all the questions, or they don't believe the seller when he says or the buyer when he says I'm not buying, you know?
Do we have time to do a super quick role play?
Of course.
I'll show you. So this is my answer to your question. I developed this thing called the 2-minute drill, where basically I have 2 minutes to determine if you're motivated or not. And that's the only thing I can ask about.
Okay.
So it's just like a subsect to the script. So I'm going to start with Neil. I mean, this looks like a great house. If you were to sell, where would you move next?
Well, we were thinking about moving to Los Angeles, but that's probably not going to happen right now.
Not right now. Well, yeah, I understand the timing might not be right. What was important about Los Angeles?
My family lives there. I want to get back to them.
Back to them. Well, yeah, it's good to be close to family. I can understand that. What's changed recently that caused you to start thinking about doing this?
I'm getting older.
Yeah, me too. But I mean, in the last couple of years, what happened recently that made you really start considering it?
My mom and dad are getting older, and I have to go there a little bit more often than I used to. So that's what's happening there.
Yeah, I know it's tough when you have to travel often. How often are you going there?
Every other week right now.
Wow, my gosh.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about that? Do you think you could make sense of that long term, or this is something that's going to result in a move no matter what?
Well, I think it's going to result in a move, but it may not be for 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm happy to call you back around that time. Tell me more about that, though. What's important about that timeline?
Well, when I say 3 to 6 months, I don't know if their condition's going to deteriorate any faster. So it could be soon, and it could be 3 to 6 months.
Gosh, yeah, I know that's hard to deal with. I'm sorry to hear that. And how does that play out? If it gets worse, that means you might stay, or if it gets worse, that means you might go sooner.
No, if it gets worse, I probably would go sooner.
Go sooner. Okay. And I mean, what are you, just based on what you're seeing now, do you think it's getting better or getting worse?
Probably getting a little worse.
Gosh, well, why don't we do this? It sounds like this might happen no matter what eventually. Why don't we plan to meet? I could stop by, and then I would go into closing and setting an appointment. So that's kind of the example. The drill is I'm trying to narrow down as quickly as possible on how motivated you are. That's a good practice thing that I used to do every single day to really help with that.
Good.
Just asking questions. That's all it is.
Just asking more questions. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. Unmute yourselves, please. Unmute yourselves. Let's give Dan a big hand. Woo! All right.
Yeah, master class.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Really great class.
Dan, we have a couple more questions here. Miguel, you had a question. lead sources, what percent of your business leads are paid for, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I went through the sources earlier, but the only one that's paid that we do is Homelight, and that's not out of pocket. That's a referral fee basis. I don't believe in any kind of like paid subscriptions for leads. I don't think it works well. Also, technically, Google is paid, but they only charge you per lead that you get. So it's not like this. It's not like paying for Zillow or anything like that. Outside of that, expired, for sale by owner, database, neighborhood, attorney referrals, family law, probate, investors that refer me deals that they're not able to buy at a discount. Agent referrals, I didn't mention that earlier. That's a big arm of my business. All those things.
How much of that, comes from Mike Ferry one-on-one?
You mean the agent?
Referrals. How many back and forth referrals you think you get?
We give a lot, but as far as how many we receive, probably 7 to 10 a year.
7 to 10, but that number more than pays for your coaching?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's no brainer.
Got it. Got it. Yvette, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Dan, thank you so much.
Of
One
course.
thing I want to commend you on is when Neil asked you, how many listings you did this month, you said 17, and I just about, fell off my chair. I did 4 this month, and I think I'm doing something special, but clearly you are the special chosen one. So I wanted to find out, I know that you're very analytical, and it sounds like you do a really good job to come out of that shell to, to kind of kick it up a notch and to be more energetic. And I know as an analytical, that can be a little bit difficult. Like Ron Cronin says, it's showtime, right? So what would you say to agents that are kind of doing what I just said? 'Cause I took 4 in February. What would you say to agents that are looking to be like Dan Mom? And how did you do that so that we have the benefit of Mike Ferry without paying for Mike Ferry?
I don't know if there's a shortcut for that, but thank you. And by the way, congrats on 4. Your 4 is probably about 17 of mine based on your price. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Thank you.
I think the first part of your question, we just talked about with DJ before the call, Neil, about how as an analytical, you can really get into that showtime mode. One thing that helps me is physical energy. Like I notice when I get really good sleep, it is way easier for me to have a big smile, really engage with people, ask good questions. My physical energy has a lot to do with that. If I'm tired as an analytical and I'm not in high energy mode, it is really tough to get there. Whereas for someone like Neil, maybe it's still relatively easy. So I would pay attention to that. It's not really real estate advice, but it definitely affects your ability to do that.
It affects your everything the way even you laid it out, Yvette. I don't know if you didn't hear this before, but you were talking about you need to shrink your goal, not the goals, but to shrink your market.
Mhm.
Okay, like Yvette, she can't work all of Los Angeles. Okay, that would just that's Palmdale to God knows where, right? But you could handle all of Las Vegas. Okay.
Right.
So she has to shrink that down. She has to also never go out and work with a buyer again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is a little bit of a problem for most of our agents. Geez, I need to make that $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. And then the other one is the definition of a lead. So those are the 3 things that you've got figured out pretty quickly, Yvette, that really keeps the numbers up. And then price point. We can work a higher price point pretty easily.
Right.
And I don't know, it's an interesting question. Do you think there's as many have-tos in the higher price points as there are in the lower price points?
You would know better than me. That's a good question.
Well, I don't know because we kind of work all of it, and I don't ever really track the high and the low. I think what happens is In markets that are falling, Newport Beach and Beverly Hills don't have a lot of people in foreclosure.
Right.
And if you have somebody that's going toward foreclosure, you got the next door neighbor that writes them a check.
Right.
That doesn't
Yeah.
go into
It
foreclosure.
probably is less. And I do think the higher in price, they're more sophisticated in hiding the motivation, and it's a little bit harder to understand. Someone in the median price point is just going to tell you, hey, I'm getting divorced, got to sell. They're probably a little bit more straightforward,
Right.
Which I think is a reason to lean into that, not to go the other direction, but that's a great reason to take on that business, because being able to understand the client's motivation quickly is a big ingredient in your success, So that's a good question. I don't know.
That's good. Excellent. All right, Dan, Mom, we're going to go into something we always do, where we'll go around the room and ask what we learned. We'd love for you to stick around. I understand if you can't. So let's just let's thank Dan in case he has to bow up. One more time.
Thank you, guys.
Dan, Mom.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, everyone.
Great job.
Hey,
Dan,
Dan, stay for a second. I want to say something.
Sure.
Go ahead, Yvonne. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Neil, for giving us this opportunity to listen to Dan again. I have listened to him multiple times. I'm a good friend of his, and I really appreciate that. And today, what I learned was Neil always taught us, in order to become bigger, you have to become smaller. Today, what I learned was to become smaller. In order to become bigger, doesn't have to mean you have to go to, shrink your area, but your qualification, pre-qual, is, check their scale, check their motivation on a scale of 1 to 10. You only take a 9 and 10. For me, I take 6, 7, 5. Sometimes I nurture them. So that's what I learned today.
That's a great point, Yvonne.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah. There are so many gold nuggets. I took a lot of notes. I want to thank you. And also, I want to let everybody know that, I was invited by Dan to his beautiful home. He threw world-class party. He does. I learned so much from him. He's generous man, very, very generous, kind, and he know how to throw parties. When you go to the party, you feel like you're so important. He make you feel so special. And the napkin has your name on it, and it has your invitation right next to the wine glass. And they have a special chef to come to prepare the food in front of you. So
yeah, tell Neil, Yvonne, because he big timed me and couldn't make it. So maybe next time.
Yeah. But you have to give.
You have to qualify.
There is a cost of admission. You got to give him a referral, man.
Yes, you have to be qualified. Okay, qualified to be invited. His qualification is very simple. Just to give him like 5 referrals a year. Oh, it's Robert was there last time I was there. Robert can testify how awesome that kind of party is. It's so emotional and
We're gonna have the party of the year, Dan. Everybody's going to try to get that ticket.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Appreciate
And
you.
also you got to connect with other great agents he invited. It's so intimate. People are just sharing gold nuggets, and it's just a great fun and a great learning experience. Yeah.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you,
Sure.
Yvonne.
Thank you.
Dan, great work today. Thank you. We're going to go around the room.
Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome to hang and listen.
Sounds good.
All right, what did we learn today from Dan, Mom? What did we learn? Come on, who wants to go first? Let's go.
You got to shrink your tolerance for motivation.
Absolutely. Determine the motivation and work it and keep that as a rule, not a wish list, but a rule. Good. Thank Frank. Frank, you're in San Diego. Which office?
With Sam with Big Block LPT.
Oh, perfect. Glad you're here. Okay, what else do we have? We
have to
practice.
No, I'm sorry.
Who is first there?
No, Joanna, you can go.
I was just
Ladies
saying
first.
we have to practice scripts more.
That's true. That's true. Music to my ears. Thank you. All right, good job.
I wanna
Oh,
Really
Robert, go
quickly.
ahead.
Thank you. Believe in finding a deal or listing today. You have to believe that you'll find it today.
Absolutely. And you're looking for a 9 or a 10.
Yeah, I'm looking for that. Okay, I didn't write that one down. Thank you,
No,
Neil.
you have to, what he looks for is a have to buy, or not in his case, but have to sells. Have to sell 9 or 10. And that's all he's looking for. And he said, you will change your life forever if you focus in on that. But you have to learn what to say and how to say it. So that means all of you have to show up on tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
All right.
All right. What else do we learn today?
I have one, Neil, actually two.
Tess, how come you don't show up at 8 o'clock in the morning anymore?
Yeah, well, the
I know
reason,
why. I know why. Because you're world class already.
no, of course not. No, not at all, not even half. All right, shorten the definition of a lead, that's one, and then shorten the time of the follow-up.
Yeah, great idea. I
And-
love it. And don't go to Fontana anymore.
Yes, of course, I'm following that. And then another thing is this, and this has really come to mind. It's really on, you have to be very strong and make a decision if you want to be a listing agent or a buyer agent. Yes. Big time.
And you want to be a,
Listing agent.
I thought the way you hesitated kind of made me nervous.
No, I've always would like to be a,
I know you're hesitating again. I want you to say listing agent.
listing agent. No, Neil, see, this is what I gathered from the past few years. I've really been a listing agent, and the only buyer that I really worked that time were my sellers. Okay. So
Okay.
that's really, really a key thing, and that really helped me a lot.
Who are you selling, me or you?
I'm selling myself.
All right, good job. What else did we learn today?
I got one, Neil.
Marco, what did you learn?
Are you willing to sacrifice and bet on yourself?
Okay, also, Marco, you must raise your energy level.
Well, I thought I did.
He did. It was very.
Do it again.
Now I gotta look for it again. Are you willing
Oh, energy level.
are you willing to sacrifice and bet on yourself?
Okay, I want you at that level or above always.
All right, deal.
Okay, it's going to make a big difference, I promise you.
I know.
All right, what else did we learn?
This is Joe from Downey.
Hey, Joe.
I learned that you can't be a lazy agent. You got to work from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 in the evening, I guess. You can't be lazy.
Some of the cases, in the beginning, it's from 5 in the morning until 7 o'clock at night until you develop the pipeline and learn the scripts and dialogues, et cetera, et cetera. But
Yeah, I usually do floor time at the Downey office, and I'm there by 8 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
trying to answer phones. But I understand you got to work hard all day, pretty much.
In the future, because some buyers come from floor time, not now, but very soon, I'd like you never to take floor time again because buyers come from there. Well, I'm going to
Right.
drive some managers nuts, but I can't tell you what year we did. I would say it was 1990 in our office in City of Industry, where we didn't have floor time anymore. We shifted. If it was your listing, you got the call directly. You didn't have to be on the floor anymore. This made a big difference. It helped us create a listing office, a listing company. Makes a difference. Okay, what else? What else did we learn?
I have a couple things. So two things I have is your multiple sources of prospecting and being world class. You can't do this without having that figured out.
That's exactly right. Good. Excellent, Valerie. What else do we learn? Come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
Oh,
What
and
do
I
you-
wanted to say thank you so much, Neil, for going really deep with him and asking him the questions on top of questions, because it makes a real difference when you know the motivation of the agent as well, and how they operate. So I really appreciate that.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. Well, I was hoping I could get some of that stuff out of him because he really is. He's I don't want to say stuck. He's single-minded, and that's what helps make him. He doesn't change that. He's not gonna. You call him and give him a buyer, he's not going to take it. I don't care if it's a $2 million buyer. He's not going to take it. He's just not. You're looking at me like I'm nuts, but you know, how many times have I told you agents not to go to a certain city? Those of you who worked for me for a while, especially Tess. I don't understand why you guys do this to yourselves. You know, you take a $300,000 buyer to Victorville. I went to Victorville for the first time in my life the other day. I drove there, okay? It's going to be a while before I drive there the second time, okay? Why would you guys do this for a $300,000 buyer? Why? I know why, because you don't have any other buyers to work with. Okay, what else did you learn today?
Well, what about a listing, Neil? What if you have a listing in Apple Valley for
I
$700,000?
How much?
$700,000.
There's a maybe, a real big maybe, because I could make a case, especially for you, that in Chino Hills, Upland in Ontario, if you focus, you'll find a $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, $1 million listing.
No, I got you.
Okay.
I understand.
I mean, it's there and back is 3 hours, you guys. And that's assuming you don't stop for gas. You can't not stop for gas. All right, what else did we learn? Robert Soriano, what'd you learn?
To be narrow-minded. To
Good job, baby.
Listings.
Okay, and also have more energy.
Have lots of energy.
That's my guy. Marco, show him what energy sounds like.
Okay.
No, goodbye. Marco, you're killing yourself. Okay, what else have we got here? Anyone else have something they want to share?
Listings taken are just better business. So go get some.
100%. Listings taken are better business. Say it again, Marco.
Listings taken are just better business. It's common sense.
I love it.